Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Spiro with an important update regarding Wuhan, China, which is, of course, ground zero for the coronavirus COVID-19 outbreak, which is now reported to have gone global, and the Chinese government has banned people in Wuhan from leaving their homes altogether. Now, one aspect I find very interesting, which I know I have covered in great detail, almost ad nauseum, is Event 201, the pandemic exercise simulating a global coronavirus pandemic, which took place on October 18th, 2019, only 6 weeks before the first case of the coronavirus was reported in Wuhan, China. Now, what many people are not talking about is that on the exact same day, October 18th, 2019, the 2019 Military World Games held its opening ceremony, followed by a U.S. men's soccer match in Wuhan, China, ground zero of the outbreak. Now, the 2019 Military World Games was held for about 10 or 11 days, and it was the first international military multi-sport event to be held in China, and it's also the largest military sports event ever to be held in China, with nearly 10,000 athletes, all of them military, from over 100 countries that competed in 27 different sports. Now, the Military World Games was set up an Olympic village for their athletes prior to the commencement of the games. The village was officially opened for athletes following the flag-raising ceremony, which was commenced by Chinese President Xi Jinping, and 230,000 volunteers were recruited for the event to be staged there in Wuhan, China. Now, here is a list of participating nations. Now, the U.S. had sent about 300 military athletes, which does not include support personnel, to Wuhan, China, only weeks before this outbreak was reported. Now, I'm not trying to go full-blown conspiracy theorist here, although no doubt I will be accused of that, but whatever, I don't care. But what are the chances that 10,000 military athletes, not including support personnel from 110 different nations, were all together at the same time in the same place, Wuhan, China, right before this outbreak began? Now, this would be the perfect cover, almost too easy, in fact, for a covert operation to be conducted. Now, ask yourself, really, how difficult would it be for any one of these nations to slip in some covert operatives along with their delegations and their athletes, and possibly release or sabotage or contaminate something or someone with the coronavirus? Now, I would bet money that most of, if not all, of the nations involved had intelligence personnel planted in their delegations. I mean, everyone was there. The Iranians, the French, the Germans, the Americans, the Saudis, everybody, all there in Wuhan, China. Now, you think that they wouldn't have their eyes and ears on the ground? And of course, this was in the middle of the trade negotiations between the U.S. and China. Smoke and mirrors, I don't know. But in my recent interview with Professor Francis Boyle, who authored the U.S. Bioweapons Act, I asked him about the possibility of sabotage, if an outside nation could be responsible in some way, and here's what he said. Professor Boyle, have you ruled out the potential for sabotage? Could a foreign agency, intelligence agency, have obtained this coronavirus, made their way into China, into Wuhan, and released it, knowing full well that there is a bioweapons lab right there that would take the blame potentially?
I have not ruled that out. But as you're saying, it would be all covert. And so far, I haven't seen that evidence. So all I can conclude from what I've seen, is that it leaked out of that BSL-4 that has leaked before, at least twice on SARS. So that, to me, applying Occam's razor is the most likely explanation. I haven't ruled out, some type of covert operation, but since it's covert, I don't have that. Now, my guess would be, if it was covert, President Xi by now knows full well what happened here. I'm sure he's got, his top people looking at this thing and figuring out, what it is and where it came from. So I guess we need to see what, if any, response there might come from President Xi to this matter. I can't say, but I haven't ruled it out. I did consider that. Indeed, that's why I didn't give interviews right away, because I was, dealing with competing alternatives here.
Now, these military world games would certainly provide the cover for a covert operation like this, especially given the fact that if it is in fact a bioweapon, like some experts believe, and if there was any blowback, it would be blamed most likely on the Level 4 bioweapons lab, which is located there in Wuhan, China. Now, I also had a lunch yesterday with Vern Lyon, who I interviewed recently. He's a former CIA operative and whistleblower, and at lunch I asked him if it's possible at all, if any intelligence agency could be involved in some way in this coronavirus whole fiasco. And he told me that you can never rule out agency involvement in anything. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm not saying that I believe this is what happened. All I'm saying is that, to me, this is something that definitely needs to be investigated as a possibility. And to me, this makes much more sense and is much more likely than the coronavirus originating from a bat soup in a food market. Now, for all the skeptics out there, I applaud you. I, in fact, consider myself a skeptic. I'm very skeptical of what the governments and the media tells us. Now, for those who think that there is no chance that this is a bioweapon, I hope you are right. But as I covered in my report yesterday, the White House has asked the medical and scientific community to investigate that possibility if this COVID-19 is in fact a bioweapon. I'll leave a link for that report below. And for those of you who find it hard to believe that any country would be capable or would do such a thing, there are many nations who are not only capable because they have their own biowarfare programs, but some of them have documented history of testing out biowarfare agents on unsuspecting citizens within their own populations, like America, for example. I'm here in America, so I'm going to use that as an example. We can see here from Business Insider, which is a mainstream publication, not a fringe site, not a conspiracy theory site. Over and over again, the military conducted dangerous biowarfare experiments on Americans. On September 30th, 1950, a U.S. Navy ship just off the coast of San Francisco used a giant hose to spray a cloud of microbes into the air and into the city's famous fog. The military was testing how a biological weapon attack would affect the 800,000 residents of the city. The people of San Francisco had no idea. The Navy continued the tests for 7 days, potentially causing at least one death. It was one of the first large-scale biological weapon trials that would be conducted under a germ warfare testing program that went on for 20 years. That program alone had 239 tests that we know about, which include experiments involving testing mind-altering drugs on unsuspecting citizens. In one shocking, well-known incident, government researchers studied the effects of syphilis on Black Americans without informing the men they had the disease. They were told they had bad blood. And in that case, they were actually given syphilis, I believe, through vaccines. Now, anyways, I'm not going to read the whole article for you, but I will leave it in the show notes below. But it goes on to document verified biowarfare experiments conducted by the U.S. military on unsuspecting U.S. citizens. A lot of this came out in court documents, actually. Now, here's one last quote from the article. Every one of the biological and chemical agents the Army used had been challenged by medical reports, despite the Army's contention in public hearings that they'd selected harmful simulants of biological weapons. They're all considered pathogens now. And if you still doubt that the government would ever target innocent civilians, men, women, and children, let's not forget that the U.S. dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. They didn't drop them on military targets. They dropped them on cities full of regular people like you and me. Well, let me know what you think below in the comments. I urge everyone to please share this report. We really need to get this information out there. I haven't really seen it anywhere, actually, and I want to thank you all for your support. You can follow me on Twitter and BitChute, where I post all of my reports and provide updates to previous reports like this one here, where I covered how Johnson & Johnson, who participated in the Event 201 pandemic exercise, now stands to gain financially by developing a coronavirus vaccine. Well, they just officially partnered with the federal government and I'm sure received funding. Again, thank you for watching. Share this report. Stay tuned for more. I'm Spiro.